Hi everyone. This week I've decided to try a new tack, a video blog or vlog. So several people have asked me what it was like to get started as an intuitive. So that's what I'm going to talk about this week. I need to start by saying that I've always been intuitive and empathic. I've always just known things. That's called claircognizance, by the way. So I've always just known things that I haven't learned. When I was growing up, I just kind of assumed that I had picked it up in a book somewhere because I read all the time. But that didn't really explain how I knew what people were feeling and what they were going to do. And I just kind of figured, well, I can read body language really well. Although that was true, I could read body language very well. I was guided by intuition. Nobody taught me what these various things meant that people did in their body language. Intuition is a sense and an instinct, and we all have it. Some of us have developed it to different levels, or to higher levels than other people have. So in my teens and in my childhood and in my teens, I trusted that intuition. I let it lead me through a lot of decision making. And I know a lot of people I speak to say they did this as children too, but then as part of growing up, you're told, well, you got to stop thinking about your feelings. You got to use your brain, blah, blah, blah. I fell for it. Somewhere along the way through adulthood, I started relying less and less on my intuition. I still experienced my intuition, and I heard it, I felt it. It didn't guide any of my decision making. I started using my logical mind, my brain, and all these things that I should do, right? In 2009, that all changed. It was a turning point in my life. I talk about it all the time on my blog and life, anything. It was very important. In 2009, I had a miscarriage and then had some health issues and was diagnosed with IIH, or idiopathic intracranial hypertension. Doesn't really matter to the point of this conversation. But what happened was that I lost a lot of vision and a lot of my physical vision, and so I was stuck at home. I had less and less influence from the outside. I was stuck at home. I was a hermit, basically. So I couldn't drive. I couldn't get distracted by the outside world. I couldn't go out and do things for other people and be there for other people all the time and not for myself, which has always been a habit for me. A problem is giving too much of myself, not taking care of myself. So this allowed me to basically turn toward the spiritual side. I was in a lot of pain. I was depressed for a while, still coming to terms with this diagnosis that I would never be able to drive again. I love driving, you have no idea. So coming to terms with this diagnosis, I prayed a lot. I prayed to be healed. I prayed for all sorts of things. But something finally happened in those 1 or 2 years. I started to listen when I prayed, not just talk to God or spirit, but to actually listen for a response. I would pray for guidance instead of a miracle. And so I started listening again. I would have enough time to find that quiet place inside myself and to hear the guidance that was coming from spirit. So I got these answers from listening to spirit, but I didn't trust them, right? Because, well, they came from my brain. I made them up. So spirit worked with me because, as I've come to learn, that was what was supposed to happen. So spirit worked with me, and I decided one day, which I was told, I wrote down, the impressions that I got. And then I consulted an oracle. And an oracle, in this case, is not the blind person at Delphi, but the tarot card or runes or some other sort of fortune-telling device, which, and every time it was triangulated. Every time it confirmed what I had been told. I've never had a problem trusting in oracles. I haven't had much of a problem trusting in oracles. And you might think, that's weird. How does that happen? How do you trust what the oracle has to say? Well, it was lots of practice. I'll give you just one example that is really good and really brought me to trusting the oracle more than anything else. In about Sometime in the spring of 2009, one day I got the urge to read the Oracle, except not just one, all of them. So I drew a card out of every deck I had, and I drew a rune out of my 1 or 2 rune sets, I don't know. Every single one of them, every card, the description, or every rune, the description pointed to motherhood and new beginnings. Every single one. We're talking 4 or 5 different sets. So I took an at-home pregnancy test because of that. Yes, because of that. And I was pregnant for the first time after 4 years of trying. I was pregnant. So, that establishes some trust there. I could give you more, but that gives you the basic idea. Being stuck at home, gave me the perfect chance to actually keep focusing on my spiritual studies and listening and finding quiet time for myself and listening to the silence. Because as in most religious traditions, it's in the silence where you can speak to God and you hear God and his messengers, or her messengers, however you choose to see it, or your higher self. So I spent 1 or 2 years like that, and then things got a little crazy because my husband got a job that was ridiculous, and we had a baby. We got pregnant for the 3rd time. Second was a miscarriage. So we got pregnant for the 3rd time, had a baby, and oh my gosh, if you're a parent, you'll understand. It was insane. So I had no time for the quiet time to find that peace inside me. So I started to doubt again. I started to doubt my abilities. I accepted them, but I was like, this is kind of weird. Maybe I'm just making it all up. So, that doubt creeps back in because you start to not have that time to reconnect with yourself and with spirit. Then one day I was working. My husband had by now quit that job and was home. So he and my daughter were elsewhere, and I was working in my office, and I quite clearly heard a voice. I didn't hear it with my physical hearing, but heard a voice inside my head say, "You're pregnant." And I said, no, that's not possible. That can't be. Nope, not pregnant. And the voice said, "Well, you are." And I said, no, I'm really not. And the voice said, "Well, fine. Don't believe me, but you're still pregnant." And so this went on for a little while. And finally the voice said, "Well, you can get a pregnancy test and test it." And I said, "Okay, fine, whatever. Maybe I'll do that. I'm not pregnant." So I wrote that down. I was that freaked out. I was like, no, that's not possible. But, I wrote it down because it was a weird experience, right? Put it in my journal. We went shopping a few days later, and I bought a pregnancy test. Brought it home. Sure enough, I was pregnant. So I had to actually show that to my husband, show him the journal entry as well as the pregnancy test, because it's kind of weird. He thought I was messing with him at first. I don't blame him. After that, I really, really started trusting again, right? So while I was pregnant with my son, then a few months later, I was getting near the end of my pregnancy, and I got real spacey. I just kind of felt disconnected with life. I just felt like I was floating constantly, and it started to freak me out. I thought maybe I was preparing to die. So when I got freaked out, and I asked Spirit what was going on, and I was told that my son and I were planning. I was a little freaked out by that, but the overall feeling was of reassurance, because I get, when I hear from Spirit, it's largely claircognizant, so I just know. So those words, those sentences will pop into my brain fully formed, and I'll get a feeling in my body. It feels right, or it feels wrong, or whatever. That's how I know. So it was an overall feeling of calm and comfort. It's all going to be good. So my brain, my body, not my brain, my mind, my spirit, and my body told me everything was going to be fine, but we were preparing for something. I was a little freaked out. Whatever, what was I going to do? As it turned out, my son's birth was very difficult, and I had to have an emergency C-section because my uterus ruptured. So, we were preparing for some big things. My son was in the NICU for a while, although he was really healthy, but things got really hairy there for a while. I don't think it was all that traumatic, but, I was asleep through it. So, it wasn't the same for me. But anyway, after that, it was, again, easier to really start trusting my intuition, remembering that had happened. And as my son was a newborn, a few other things happened here and there that just kind of helped reinforce that feeling. And I realized that I was being trained by my spiritual team, which we all have a team of spirit guides. In 2009, my team had consisted of a lot of healers, people who came in and healed me. And now I know I had teachers on my team helping me. So one day, my son was about a year old, a year and a half. I landed through a series of events on the webpage of Slade Robertson and his program for teaching intuitives, for emerging intuitives, for coaching them, not teaching them. And I was reading the description of what this program could teach, what it could do, how the people could benefit from the program. And I realized finally at some point that I was crying and I was saying, yes, this is where I belong. This is my home. I hadn't noticed that I had started crying. I hadn't noticed that I was whispering, yes, over and over again. I was shaking. I was excited and calm all at the same time. And that's one of those feelings that I had come to learn is when spirit is coming through me full on force saying yes, that's the feeling I get. I've had it before in really deep conversations with people about really deep spiritual matters. And when we're on a really connected plane, or when we're really connected, that happens. So, of course, my brain comes in and says, no, I'm an editor. I can't be a professional intuitive. I'm an editor. But then Spirit reminded me I'd been intuitive my whole life. Of course, I'm already intuitive. There was just a difference being professional or not. Various other arguments came up and, for example, I can't afford this. There's no way I can afford this kind of training. We're barely making ends meet now, because things have been very tight after our son was born because of all the medical bills. So we're barely making ends meet. I can't make that happen. So synchronicities happened. I say, I can't do that. I don't have the money for it. And suddenly in comes this job for me to do. Hey, this author, because I'm an editor, this author is willing to pay you buku bucks to edit this book for really fast. And suddenly there's a big load of money, just enough to pay for the program. Things happen. Synchronicities. That's how Spirit shows you, yes, this is what you're supposed to be doing, you idiot, whenever you're not paying attention. The training of the program actually allowed me to see that what had always been normal for me, so I assumed was normal for everyone else, was not really so normal. Again, we're all intuitive to some degree, but mine is a little more advanced, or a lot more advanced. And so it finally helped me to really accept that I was special, that I was different, right? Because, I'm no more special than anybody else. And that's true, I'm not, but we're all special. We all have our special gifts. And this was one of mine. This is one of mine. It was taking that course that really helped me to decide, yes, this is what I want to be doing. I've been helping people like this my whole life. So why not? Why not give people readings? For years I would get a really big urge to do a reading for someone in particular, or I would get a feeling or a message and go to them and say, well, this might sound crazy, but... And so now I don't do that. Well, I do if they don't know, but otherwise, I don't have to preface this with, this may sound crazy, but I just say, this is what I'm getting, and this is a message for you. There are still some times when I doubt what I'm getting, especially in our own lives. Paraprofessionals, the professional intuitives specifically, they still get readings from other people, because when it comes to our own lives, it's hard to separate what's coming through our minds, what's going through our bodies from the experience, and what's coming in from spirit. It can be really difficult. And so that's where that separate, distinct person who's not part of this can help us and can confirm what we're experiencing, right? Sometimes I have readings from other people whenever I start to doubt, and sometimes it's just a matter of going back to that still, quiet place and finding that quietness in that center. And that's when that message really comes through. That's what I tell people who, when they're trying to figure out a couple of, make a choice between difficult decisions, find your quiet, find your peace, just get calm, and then think about the options. Take each in turn, and when you know, you know. You know, I get a sense, I get the feeling of calm. We all have, you'll find the spot when your head and your heart and your stomach are all in agreement, especially your heart and your stomach. When they're in agreement, you feel good, and you know that's right. You know, you think about the first time you met the person you were going to marry, or you stepped into the home that you were going to buy or rent, and you just knew. There was no thinking, there was no planning, there were no checklists and comparisons of cost and benefit and blah, blah, blah. You just knew. That's what you have to do. Just find that quiet place and look at the options until you know, you get it. Getting back to the takeaway. What is it like for me to start as a professional intuitive? It was like coming home. It was just stepping more fully back into myself. Like I had gone on a long journey away from myself and had come back home finally. That's all it was. And that's what it is.